Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. This is an amazing hour that we take once a month. My name is Tina Hurley. I'm the founder and director of Less Leg More Heart, a national organization that provides support supplies and services to amputees to improve their quality of life. And one of our main initiatives is bringing health and wellness to the comfort of people's homes or while they're on the go, especially with mobility challenges, so that you guys understand different providers that are out there offering things to complement your wellness and to give you other perspectives than you get just in traditional Western medicine and the doctors that you see. We have an amazing speaker today. I say that every month because I'm just so blessed. We have great people, but Dr. Novotny has been here a number of times at this point and has an invaluable perspective on nervous system deregulation and management of stress and pain and anxiety. And her accolades are so many. I would implore any of you guys to look into her institute that she created, PABR Institute. You can find it at pabrinstitute.com. But Dr. Novotny essentially is on a mission and to provide kind of what we like to do, pain, stress, and anxiety relief to those that seek more natural and naturalistic forms of treatment. And especially when other things have fallen short, which I know all of us here and that are watching the playback can relate to. Her approach comes from lots of experience in a lot of different settings with wide ranges of patients over nearly 2 decades. She has a background in orthopedics, sports, geriatrics, balance disorders, which I know us amputees have, nerve injuries, chronic pain, and postural restorative types of work, which is really interesting. She helps people basically reduce and eliminate their stress and their pain and anxiety and orthopedic issues and sleep issues, and the list goes on and on. She also has, in her spare time, co-authored 2 Amazon best-selling books. You guys can check them out. Don't Quit, Stories of Persistence, Courage, and Faith, as well as Success Habits of Superachievers. So you guys can take a peek at that. And without further ado, Dr. Novotny, thank you so much for being here again to share your wisdom with us.
No, thanks for having me again, Tina. It's always a pleasure, and I enjoy talking about this topic because how I address it is a little bit unique. It's not always talked about in the way that I talk about it. So I'll go through kind of the topic in general, how you calm your nervous system down and how it relates to pain, stress, anxiety, PTSD, and just how you can look at it differently and approach it differently. And so if you have questions, please put them in the chat. If that helps, that way I'll get through it, but then I'm open to any questions. If you want to be a specific to you or general, I'm open to all of that. And I'll just get started here. We're going to talk a little bit about how the nervous system can influence the body and how your breathing mechanics matter and how the way you hold yourself matters and how all 3 of those can really make you feel free and just go about life and your body doesn't really matter, or it can really lock you up and create problems because any experiences you have really impact your body and it gets stored in your body. So I'm gonna demonstrate on my own body. So I'm gonna move around a little bit just to help you guys visually see certain things about our body. So when I talk about the nervous system, I'm talking about the fight or flight nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. That nervous system in our body is called the autonomic nervous system. So it also includes your enteric nervous system, which is your gut and digestion. So if we think about the sympathetic nervous system, that's the fight or flight nervous system, that ramps us up. We need that. It's ingrained in our human being for our whole existence. If we need to fight or flee something, we have that system built into our body, into our existence, and we need that. There's also a part where we freeze, and there's also something called fawning. That's where you're people pleasing. So fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. That's all part of the sympathetic nervous system. That's the system that ramps us up, and we need it. The problem is we don't want to exist in it. We don't want to be ramped up 24/7 every single day. It should be, hey, let's ramp up, run out of the burning building, and then calm down. And it saved us from the burning building. We should not be existing that way, which is often part of our culture and part of what we're taught. If we're not in sympathetic fight or flight, then ideally we want to be in parasympathetic relaxation. rest, relaxation, repose, sleep, digestion. We want our body to be able to go into that state and spend most of our waking hours and sleeping hours in that state. When we think about our daily life and we have different stressors in our life, whether they're physical, mental, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, those put us in a fight or flight state. And depending on how long we're thinking about that or how long we are spending time in that stress state will determine our nervous system then behaving in that way for a period of time afterwards. So if I think about right now, I'm just standing here talking to you guys and I hear a loud bang, I jump. I just heard something that created a fear in me that put me in a fight or flight state. My body is going to tense in reaction to that noise. The problem then is, okay, my body just reacted. Mentally, I'm scared. Emotionally, I'm scared. Intellectually, I'm scared. Physically, I'm scared. And physically, I felt my body tighten up. Now, if I look outside and I was like, oh, just a car backfiring, it wasn't anything to be afraid of. I can clear myself mentally, emotionally, and intellectually, and then go about my day. But the problem is, what we don't often do is clear our body physically. This is where we get into a lot of trouble. Is if I don't clear myself physically, my muscles that just learned to tighten up in response to that loud noise, they continue to tighten up. And they just stored that fear that I felt in the muscles. Now the muscles learned a pattern of hold and guard me. Even if I just cleared myself mentally, if I didn't pause and be like, okay, muscles let go, and consciously think about it and get them to release by changing my breathing pattern, if I don't do that, the nervous system still holds my body in that tense state. And we may realize that because if someone comes up to you and pushes on your shoulders and say, oh my gosh, you have tight knots in your shoulders, or behind the base of your skull or your low back, if you push on areas and you feel it tender or tight, you stored tension in your body related to some kind of stress point in your life. And you may not have realized that you did that, or you may realize you do it, but you didn't know how to get out of it. And that's where things become a problem. Because if you think about from your youth all the way to your current state, we all have many stresses. We all do. Sometimes it starts very young, sometimes maybe in your 20s or 30s or at some point in your life. So if you're not releasing the stressors in your life every single night, they build up and your muscles start to contract and you become more and more tense. And I often hear people say, oh, I'm so tight. I wake up in the morning and I feel like I'm 120 years old. I can't stand up straight, or my hamstrings are straight or tight, I mean. Those are all signs that your body has undergone some stresses and physically it didn't know how to release them. And we didn't release them on a daily basis. So your body is loose and free flowing and free of whatever happened to you from that day. And sometimes we're under too much stress that we're not able to fully release every day, and that's okay. But what we need to do is learn how to do that. Because that's very important, especially if you've undergone some type of trauma and are experiencing PTSD. Because your body underwent such a dramatic change when you experienced a traumatic experience that your body forgets how to let go. And if it starts to let go, it feels too unstable that it then clenches back up. So it's one thing to have a stressor and then release it at the middle at the night or, the next morning. But it's another thing to experience a severe traumatic event and then try to let go. Those are a little bit different processes. You can still do it the same way, but the speed at which you do it has to be changed and slowed down, especially if it's PTSD. So let's talk first if we're just talking about stressors and not the PTSD part, and then we can come back later and capture that part. Is that all good? So I've talked a little bit about the nervous system and how our body physically responds. So what can we do about that? There's a couple ways besides some of the common ways of journaling, meditation, breath work. What I'm going to talk to you about is how you position your body, how it matters, and breathing mechanics, which is very different from breath work. And I like to be very specific when I say this is not breath work in the traditional sense, because it's not about the rhythm of how you breathe. It's how you structurally are breathing, which is very different. And we'll go through that. So when we think about our body position, what I mean is how do we position the rib cage? Not necessarily your posture, because when you think of posture, you think about sitting posture and standing posture. I'm talking about how do you position your rib cage in relation to your legs and arms and head. And how do you do it when you're laying on your side? Or if you're on your hands and knees, or however, if you're sitting in a wheelchair, or if you're standing and you have a prosthesis on. I'm talking about how do you position your rib cage? That's very critical. So our rib cage, if you think of the word cage, it's a cylindrical structure. If I grab, this is kind of cylindrical. So bottle of sparkling water. The bottom part here is very cylindrical. So it's stable when it's on a flat base. As soon as I tilt it and go on an edge, it becomes very wobbly and unstable. We have to figure out the same thing about our rib cage. If I take my rib cage and I have it in a very neutral position, my rib cage, the front of these lower ribs are very flush with the muscles and tissues just below it. If I take my rib cage now and I lift it up in front, the way that we're taught to hold ourselves and to have this Superman military posture, now the ribs right here in front, there's a flare and then they drop off. So if you feel on your body, if you feel a drop off of your ribs right here, you know that your rib cage is not on a flat, stable base. It's not in a neutral, stable position. And it doesn't matter how much belly fat or anything you have here, you can feel your ribs and you can feel, is there a drop off or is it flush and smooth? Okay. I highly recommend you guys check on yourself just because it will help you understand what we're doing here. Okay. So if this rib cage is lifted up in front, and you can see my back starts to arch more. So if I'm in this position where I'm trying to create a flat stomach here and I'm upright here and holding myself upright like we're taught for many different things, now I've just lifted up my rib cage and now I've hinged off of my low back. So my cylinder of my rib cage is now hinging off my low back, which makes me very unstable. And the only way that I can stabilize myself is I have to tip my pelvis forward to accommodate it so I don't fall backwards. And my back muscles just kicked in big time. If you were to poke my back muscles right now, it'd feel like cement. If I drop my ribs down, now there's some squish. There's some give in my back muscles. They're still supporting me, but they're not the only thing supporting me. But if I lift up my rib cage again, now these back muscles just went really hard. Okay. This becomes a problem, and I'll talk about it in a second. But if I lift my rib cage up, in order not to fall back, my pelvis tips forward. Now my body weight shifts forward on my feet. This is all important. I'll tie it back to the nervous system in a second. When I tip everything forward and my pelvis goes forward, now my body weight shifts and it's not really through my knee joint and my hip joint. Everything is forward. It goes towards the front of my feet, which will affect you if you have any type of prosthesis as well. Okay. And you may have to do this depending on the prosthesis you have as well too. So I'm telling you this for your nervous system, but I know there may have to be some accommodations for if you have some kind of amputation and have a prosthesis. But this information is very important to take to whoever is working with you to fit you for devices as well. Because your nervous system will affect your ability, how you use your arms and your legs. Okay. So if I've shifted my body weight forward because I've lifted up my rib cage and my pelvis tipped forward, I've decreased the space in my hip joint now. Automatically, I've decreased the space. It can lead to impingement, snapping hip syndrome, different types of cam impingement or pincer impingement. It can lead to labral issues. So just know it can lead to more wear and tear at your hip joints just by standing this way. The same thing, it can lead to more pain on the front of your knee and the kneecap because your body weight is now shifted forward. And when you do that, you become more dominant on the front muscles, your quads, and you lose the ability to sense your hamstrings. And your hamstrings will feel tight to you. And it will affect your feet and your feet joints as well as you stand this way for a long time. The same thing going up is by standing this way, it's going to adjust the space available in my shoulders and my neck and can lead to shoulder issues, neck issues, jaw issues, head issues, migraine issues as well. All because my rib cage was in an elevated forward prominent position. Okay. And we want to try to get out of that. That is one layer of compensation. So sometimes people are like that and they lift up the ribs, but then they also do a sway back posture. That's a compensation on top of a compensation. You can also have where the rib cage drops in and you're still arched. Okay. So you can still have where these ribs are flared out, but you've dropped in right here in the back has an even greater arch. So there's different ways that you can compensate on top of a rib cage that's not in a very stable cylindrical manner. This is all important because when the back muscles are taught to overwork, they affect the fight or flight nervous system that lies along the spine. So if these back muscles are on, that means they are constantly compressing on the fight or flight nervous system in your spine. And here's an example that will help relate to what I'm talking about. If you think about a cat, a dog, or if you've been on a safari or been at the zoo and you see a tiger or a lion, they curl up often to sleep. Not always, but a lot of times they curl up to sleep. When they get up, what do? They stretch and arch their back to get ready. So they wake themselves up by kicking in the back muscles so that they are awake. So they kick in their fight or flight nervous system to wake, to go about whatever they're going to do. We even do this as well. If you're sleepy sitting at your desk chair, how many times do you go, and you kick in the back muscles to wake you up? So you're stimulating yourself because you're sleep deprived or tired or just sleepy. And you stimulate yourself by kicking in the back muscles to activate the fight or flight nervous system to ramp you up. So the back muscles really matter. Ideally, we don't want these back muscles dominant. When you go to reach for something, you do not want your back muscles doing all the reaching. You want your shoulder to slide forward through the shoulder blade. So the back is not so dominant. If you squat, you want to think about squatting so that your back is just in a neutral or slightly rounded so you can squat and come back up, not arch it, which is actually using the back muscles. If you need to lift a weight that you're not prepared for, then you need to guard the back and do it very rigid. But if you want to be able to reach down and maybe even twist, you need to be able to turn your back muscles off. Okay. Because having the back on and lifting the ribs up locks your body up, which goes against mobility and twisting and turning and flexibility. So we want to get this rib cage back into a neutral position so the back isn't dominant, so that when you're walking and moving and using your legs and arms, you feel these muscles working, not the back doing the work for you. This is super critical if you have any type of pain as well. Okay. So often our pain is related to muscles tightening up in response to stress and pulling our bones and joints out of position. Okay. If the example I gave earlier where I heard a loud noise and I tightened up, if I tightened up my back enough and then I go to bend forward without releasing, I might feel a pain in my back. But if I took the time to release and get the rib cage to drop down and the back muscles to release, then if I go to reach forward, now my back muscles are allowing my vertebrae to slide and I can actually bend forward. Okay. So if you have pains around in your body that just show up and you're thinking, where in the world did they come from? Look back at your previous week and see, has there been a stress, or maybe in a few months where stresses have built up? And what happens is the muscles contract and start to pull on your body. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and there was enough pull that it pulled it out of position. And when it pulls it out of position, a lot of times we rest, which we're calming ourselves down. But the other thing you can do is start to target certain areas around where the pain is and see, okay, is my rib cage back down into a neutral position? Can I feel the muscles around that area relax? If not, you probably need some help to learn how to do that. But the key is, can we get the rib cage back into a neutral position so the back muscles aren't dominant because they lock your body up? Okay, does that make sense so far? Good. Okay. So how we position our rib cage is very important because it determines how much the back muscles work, and the back muscles contracting will determine how much they're physically compressing on the fight or flight nervous system that ramps us up in response to any stressors. Okay. Now, that's how we're positioned. Now we're going to breathe in breathing mechanics because they're very intertwined, these two topics or three topics. So when we think about breathing, I'm going to pretend you know nothing about breathing. I want to just go clean slate. That way we're all on the same page. If we think about breathing, we have a diaphragm muscle in our body that looks like a grain silo. There's a dome on top of walls. Okay. When you inhale, the dome flattens down. When you exhale, the dome goes back up. Okay. So when you inhale, the dome flattens down, and you think of it like a vacuum. It creates negative space to pull air in like a vacuum. When you exhale, the dome goes back up and it pushes air out. Okay. So ideally, we shouldn't need a lot of extra muscles other than this one to get us to breathe. The problem is we are all trained to breathe in a fight or flight pattern that uses other muscles to breathe. Okay. So how many times do you go to the doctor and they say, I want to listen to your lungs, take a deep breath, go like this? Often. I've seen it my whole entire life, but I still see it all the time. The problem with that is that doctor just said, arch your back to get air in, lift up your shoulders, lift up your ribs to get air in, without realizing they said that. They just told you to do that. So that doctor that said, do this, just said, kick in your back muscles to breathe, which stimulated your fight or flight nervous system, and you lift up, which is going to increase your blood pressure, increase your heart rate. Okay. All to breathe so they can listen to your lungs. Instead, if we can get the diaphragm to work instead of all these other muscles, then when you take a deep breath in, I just did, and you didn't see me move. Okay, my lungs are completely full with air, and the doctor could listen to my lungs fully, but I used my diaphragm to breathe because ultimately that muscle should just drop down and air should flow in. Okay, this is important because when this dome goes up and down, it stimulates a nerve that calms our nervous system down. That's why you hear so much about breath work nowadays. Everyone's talking about breath work because they know that vagus nerve gets stimulated when the diaphragm goes up and down. The problem is, if your mechanics aren't right and you're going like this to breathe in, you're not really stimulating that nerve, which is a problem because many people who have PTSD or trauma get very triggered by breath work because their body is in a fight or flight state and they're practicing breathing mechanics in a fight or flight pattern, which is going to further trigger them and their PTSD. So how you breathe is very, very critical. And I can't say it enough that I don't advocate breath work unless your mechanics are correct, because it's that critical. Because I don't want you to do breath work practices where it's actually causing your stress and anxiety to increase. Okay. So what can we do? Well, if we think about the diaphragm, we want that dome to go up and down. The way it goes up and down is the walls of the diaphragm have to be supported. If the walls here are not supporting the dome, and let's say the walls go out like this, then the dome can't really go up and down that far. Okay. So how do we get these walls down? Well, they get supported by the side abs and those ribs being down. So remember how I mentioned earlier, and I said, do you have that rib drop off? Are your ribs lifted up and flared out? If they are, guess what? They're not supporting the walls of the diaphragm. So when you breathe, you're going to feel yourself lift up to breathe because you don't have support to use the diaphragm. So if you want to use the diaphragm, that means we have to, again, get the rib cage down, especially in front here. Those lower ribs have to go down and in because they support the walls of the diaphragm. So those walls can be that strong support so the dome can go boop down and then air flows in. And so then you don't have to lift up and use your back and neck and shoulders to get air in. Does that make sense? It's a little complicated, but just if you nod your head or something, just so okay. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate, write them in the chat so I can go through them. So we have to get this rib cage down. We really need it to be down for many reasons. First and foremost, so that you can use your diaphragm. Belly breathing is not diaphragmatic breathing. Belly breathing is pushing your abdomen out, and often it flares your ribs up, and it is not belly, it's not diaphragmatic breathing. True diaphragmatic breathing is getting air into your lungs. So the expansion should happen where your lungs are. So if your lungs go from here to here on both sides and to the side, and they go back, when you inhale, you should feel a gentle expansion all over, front, side, back. It shouldn't be a bolus coming at your belly. We want air to go into your lungs, not push your belly out, which actually kicks in your back and ramps you up. Okay. So I just want to be really clear on that because we want to get your diaphragm. And it feels completely different when you can get your diaphragm. It is a huge game changer because all of a sudden your neck, shoulders, and your back can just relax and let go. And you're sitting here breathing and they're not working. And it's like, oh, my body is now not doing all of this extra energy just to breathe. And I'm not tightening up all of this area just to breathe. Because when I tighten all this area up to breathe, I'm ramping up my nervous system. And now any mental and emotional stressors are perceived at a greater danger just because of how I breathe, or just because of how I hold my rib cage, and just because of how I use my back muscles too much just to reach forward or walk. Okay. So I say all this because your breathing mechanics affect your nervous system. How you position your rib cage and your body affects your nervous system. And how you position your rib cage affects your breathing mechanics. So those three concepts are all intertwined, and you have to address all three at once. your breathing mechanics, your body position, and your nervous system. We need to work on all three at once to get you relief. Okay. So we're going to go through a little exercise here in just a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit on PTSD first, and then we'll do the breathing exercises. Then I'll see if you guys have questions, and then I can always throw in some more topics if we have extra time. Okay. So PTSD. So what I talked to you about is with getting your rib cage in position so that you can breathe differently, so that you can use your body differently, is all great if you have a stressor and you can release it. What we're working on by what I just explained is how do we get the body to release tense muscles that developed from a stressful situation? When you release those muscles, you have to be able to use other muscles to stabilize you. So when I talked about if my rib cage is lifted up and my pelvis is tipped forward, I can feel my quads, but I can't feel my hamstrings. The quads are part of the system that puts me in fight or flight mode. The calf muscles, the quads, the back muscles, the pecs, they're all part of the fight or flight response. Now, if I relax my body by this process that we're going to go through in a second, if I relax my body, the problem now becomes, what do I use? Well, we have to teach you how to get your hamstrings working, your inner thighs working, the side abs working, the triceps working, another set of muscles that are used to stabilize your body. Because if we just get you to relax and let go, you're going to spring back with a vengeance back to the way you were. Because your body doesn't know how to work being in a relaxed state because it hasn't done it in a while. Maybe a year, maybe a day, maybe a decade, maybe a couple decades. So what I'm talking about is a process. And as you learn to relax and release the nervous system tension, at the same time, you want to work on stabilization. Okay. If you've experienced PTSD, this is even more critical because when you start to feel your body relax, it can be triggering and your body's going to want to contract all the more. So the process, if you've had trauma, has to go even slower so that as soon as you relax something, you feel something activate immediately. So that your body doesn't become too unstable, which puts you in a reverse contraction and things guard even more. And I say this, having worked with many people with PTSD, that you have to go slow. And the problem is when you've had PTSD and you start to feel relief, you want to do it more and more and more. And I say, I only want you doing this 5 minutes, possibly less, a couple times a day. This is what we're going to do is not to do every hour because the body cannot handle relaxing too fast because there's nothing to stabilize it. And so you'll just go back into your old pattern with a vengeance. Okay. So what I want to go through, and if you've had any PTSD, I'll explain. I want you to feel something in addition. So we're going to have you do this seated. And we're going to sit in a chair. Now, when you sit in a chair, sit all the way back so your low back is touching the back of the chair. And just let your upper back relax into the chair. Okay. With your feet on the ground, try to get the chair as low as possible. So ideally, we want the height of your knees at the level of your hip crease. Okay. If they're not, try to put something under your feet, or if you practice this afterwards, put something under your feet. It's going to be easier for your back to let go and for your body to release. Okay. This is a position that we're going to work in. If you've had any type of PTSD, I want you to take your heels and just pull back a little bit so you feel the hamstrings back here. Okay. If you haven't had PTSD and you're okay with doing this, don't add the heel part in because I just want you to feel relaxation. If um if you're feeling the hamstrings by pulling your heels back and you feel any other pain, let me know, just because we might have to adjust something else. Okay. If you have a straw, go ahead and grab it. I am currently traveling, so I did not bring my straw, or it's in the other room, but I don't want to wake my baby. So yes, you can use a pen, but I don't even think I have one right now. But you can also use a pen and take out the pen. But if you have a straw or a pen, go ahead. You're going to put it in your mouth between your lips. Okay. And you're going to pucker up and hold on to it. Then we're going to take one hand and put it on your chest. The other hand we're going to put on your belly. Then let your tailbone just slide forward a little bit so it feels like, oh, that low back is just being cushioned by the chair. Okay. Okay. So we're going to then go through a process. So what we're going to now talk about the breathing. I'm going to start very simply and then get a little bit more detailed. We're going to breathe 4 steps. We're going to breathe in through the nose, pause and hold your breath for a second, then blow out through your mouth, and then pause and hold your breath 2 to 3 seconds. I will start out by that pause being probably 2 seconds just because this is new. The calmer you get, the longer you'll be able to hold your breath after the exhalation. Our focus right now is on the exhalation and getting the rib cage down. When you inhale, just observe what you do. It's okay if you lift up. It's okay if your head comes up, your shoulders come up, your back arches. Just observe. We can't change the way you inhale today because you have to have practice with the exhalation and getting your rib cage down. Because the rib cage has to be down in order for you to use your diaphragm to change the way you inhale. Okay. If you are doing this and you want to be on camera and you want me to look at you, I will watch you guys. And then if you want, you can tell me if you want me to make any comments. I don't have to, but if you want, just make sure the camera is at least from like your nose to your belly button so I can see. And I don't have to make any comments on any of you, but just that's there if you want and you want me to look at you. So, okay. So I'm going to guide you through this, one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. Then I'm going to just get close so I can watch you. Okay. So we're going to start by gently breathing in your nose. Pause, and then blow out through your straw. Hear the air coming out of your mouth or straw. Hold. And breathe in. Gently breathe in your nose. And blow out. Blow out so you hear the air coming out of the straw or your mouth. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in gently. Just note what's happening. And blow out. Hear the air coming out of your straw, out of your mouth. Hold. Now breathe in. Gently breathe in your nose. Observe what's happening. And blow out. Feel your chest sink in under your hand and feel your belly spill out into your other hand. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in gently. And blow out. Feel your chest sink away from your hand, away from your shirt, away from your head. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in gently. And blow out. Feel the collarbones relax down away from your neck as your chest sinks in, your belly spills out. Hold. And breathe in. Keep your back relaxed as you breathe in gently, your nose to your throat. And Blow out. Feel the chest melt in, your armpits relax as your rib cage drops down towards your pelvis. Hold and breathe in. Feel the air go in and blow out. Sink away from your hand. Chest melts in. Feel the armpits relax. Butt cheeks let go. Hold and breathe in. Feel the air go in gently and blow out. Chest melts in. Armpits relax. Belly softens. Hold and breathe in. Feel the air go in your nose to your throat and blow out. Chest melts in. Feel the low back let go as your belly spills out. Hold. Couple more and breathe in. Feel the air go in and blow out. Armpits relax. Let that low back go. Belly softens. Hold. And breathe in. One more. Feel the air go in gently. And blow out. Chest melts in. Armpits relax. And take a break. Could you feel your chest going in as you exhale? Some? Okay, that's good. Could you feel your belly spilling out as you exhaled? That's the harder one. Could, some of you could. Okay, good. That's good. So what we're doing is by having you breathe in and then you exhale, the chest goes in, ribs go down, the belly spills out. That helps us get these lower ribs to drop down and in. When you suck your gut up and in, that lifts these ribs, they flare up and out. We don't want that for an inhalation. So we want to set up the inhalation by correcting our exhalation. So when we exhale and we drop in and let that belly come out, we're getting our rib cage to drop down and in so that we can hold that there. So when we inhale, guess what? Now you just supported the diaphragm. If you, just one second, Tina. If you suck your gut up and in on the exhale, which is what we're typically taught, now you've taken away the ability to support your diaphragm. Okay, so this is going to feel very counterintuitive to a lot of people because they're not used to letting their gut come out on the exhalation. Yes, Tina.
I was just wondering, and thank you. I've learned this before because this is like your third class with us, and I implement them often. I'll in fact share something today that happened where I used it. But I
Yeah.
have a vascular disorder, so I can't wear my left prosthetic when I'm sitting or at rest. So my left residual limb is just sort of hanging while I'm sitting, and my right foot is grounded. And I have PTSD, so my heel's tucked, and I have a hamstring, but it's unilaterally spread because my residual limb's just hanging, and I have like SI tension because there's no distal point of contact. Do you have any recommendations for those of us sitting in wheelchairs or may not have contact points on the end to stabilize that hip and back?
Do you have some hamstrings where you can press your thigh down even without the heel?
Yeah, I think most of us do.
Okay.
Even AKs, they can push down with their hamstring. And in fact,
If
doing
you
that right now, as you say, it feels a little better.
Yeah, I would do that. And that's a great question. So I would definitely do that. Make sure when you do it, so when you press just with the thigh down, you be careful that you don't get your SI in your sacrum. Make sure that you press so that you feel only your hamstring up to your butt fold.
Okay.
You will very easily try to get the back to compress on the sacrum. So learning to tease that apart is going to be critical for you.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So what we just did is like the beginning steps on how do we get the breathing mechanics under control, and you're also working on getting the rib cage position in control. So then you can learn to stabilize yourself. So You can walk differently. You can reach differently. You can twist differently. When a stressor comes, you can stabilize by anchoring the rib cage down, because your rib cage will change position. Your breastbone will change position when you have stress. When you have a stress trigger, your breathing mechanics will change. They do for me, even though I teach this and I practice this daily. They have to, because you're a human being. Your breathing mechanics have to change when you're under stress because you're human. And this is a process that's necessary for you to exist as a human, because this is a normal process to have a stress response. The problem is when it becomes chronic. And the problem is when we stay in that physical existence pattern of a fight or flight pattern. So it's just abnormal when it becomes your normal pattern to be in a fight or flight state. So I will go through questions now. I kind of threw a lot at you guys. So.
Well, I think Bob had a question that said basically, is the process the same if core strength is compromised and they're standing or in a wheelchair? And I think you spoke to a little bit, but is there anything else? Bob, did she cover that for you in terms of pushing down, or was there something else you wanted to highlight? I just asked to unmute there. While he's thinking about that, I wanted to share something real quick while you guys are thinking of questions. So have PTSD. I can say I'm like proud, but also like very transparent about it. And I had my routine surveillance ultrasounds for my legs. I have a very rare vascular condition. I failed 13 surgeries, 3 amputations. It was a whole mess. So every 6 months I have to go in and make sure that there's no huge major catastrophe that's going to rush me into surgery. So it's stressful in terms of its objective, but because of the white walls and the smell of the establishment and the floor being on the same floor as where I was told I was getting my leg amputated, and like there's just, it's bombardment of triggers, right? So I'm walking in, I know that tonight we're going to be talking to Dr. Novotny, and so it's already on my mind. But as I'm walking in, literally, as the elevator floors are ascending, I'm literally like doing exactly what you were mentioning. My breath was getting shallow. My muscles like were clenching down. I was like getting a little lightheaded almost because I wasn't breathing very well. And my heart started racing as I'm walking toward the doors. And I checked in and I sat down. And I just like took a little inventory because I'm like, I'm definitely reacting. I'm not under threat at this moment. I'm going to be okay either way. But the process that I've learned through you and also in some of these other learnings is like there's 4 steps to mastering your body and these reactions. And it's knowledge, awareness, correction, and then consistency. So we've learned the thing. Now we need to be aware of when it's happening to us under those moments where it's happening. Then we need to correct the thing that's happening intentionally. And then we have to be consistent about our corrections in order to make those habit. And I'm still struggling. Like I still have to work on it. But today, you know, I took the inventory, I did the awareness piece, I did the correction piece, I did the exact same thing you're sitting in the seat with. I started to like breathe through my nose, breathe out through my mouth. And honestly, it passed within like a minute. Heart rate was back down. But this is actually, before I learned about all of this, it's almost like the more you know that you know that you don't know. And so each time that I learn from you, what might seem rudimentary to somebody because they don't understand the complexity to how it manifests in your body, the like ignorance is bliss concept, but this is like a real reality. Like I've been able to get out of pain through breathing. I've been able to get out of panic through breathing. I've been able to get out of crisis mode, clear brain fog, or like paralysis, like analysis paralysis, where I can't make motion because I'm too overwhelmed. So it's really helpful, but you just have to become consistent at being aware of what's happening and correcting it. I just wanted to share that piece because it happened today.
That's good. I'm glad that you took the time to say, okay, let me work on this and get yourself out of it. Because it's when you're not trained to do it, it's hard to remember to really do it and implement it. But the more you practice it, it gets faster. And like just you said, it took you a minute. So excellent. Good job.
Thank you. Bob said he has some screws, plates, and wire in his chest from trauma previous. Oh, you're off mute. Okay, sorry. Go ahead. I won't speak for you.
Yeah, I basically let's just say I bombed the assignment that day in the military. I got a lot of hardware in my chest and my left shoulder, so I got to watch what I actually do for really expanding the chest or decreasing the chest. Is there any key points to look at there, or just be more aware of what you're doing?
Yeah, so even though you have the hardware in, what we're doing isn't a huge movement that would create problems for that. So with the hardware there, your muscles are still working on your body to move. And I can see just from your little movements that you're doing right now, you're moving more than what I'm talking about that we're getting for your rib cage.
Yeah, I'm moving actually a lot more than I have in the last 6 months, believe it or not. I'm finally getting up and out, and got some new legs, and it's helped me out. So I am doing more.
Yeah.
One is self-advocacy. It's doing it for yourself. And some of the things that you have said the VA has also told me as part of one of the veteran support groups, and it works.
Good.
And it's just being aware of what's around you, or being aware of your situation and knowing how to deal with it is, I think, the key.
It is. And what we're doing would actually help with all the hardware. So when you have any type of surgery, and you've had multiple, your body will guard. It
Right.
just is going to guard to protect you because something invasive was done to you. And so it's not just your legs, but you've had it stuff in your chest. So your chest and trunk muscles are going to guard. So what we just did, that whole practice, is very critical for you to work on to help the muscles release and to realize your muscles are safe and are okay right now.
Okay.
Because they're trying to provide this cement structure for you to take over the bones. And we want the bones and the hardware to do the work. And your muscles to learn how to relax so they can contract when needed, not to be in a guarded state. Because if you stay in a guarded state, what happens when you really need to be in a fight or flight mode? They can't really contract much further. They can't do what you need them to do if you're already in a guarded state. So learning to get them to release by what we just did is really a great path for you to work towards.
Okay.
Awesome. We have another comment to Dr. Novotny. So Christina, she said she's a whole body breather with PTSD, carries tons of energy in her body. This technique could be a game changer. She does all the things that you say not to do. I did too, my first lecture with her, by the way.
All of them.
Oh yeah, belly out, chest up, proud Superman. I get it. And then she said she got angry once at therapy. They were trying to teach her EFT tapping, and she got triggered and got really angry from the trigger and didn't know why until you would explain that PTSD response, making it harder.
Yes, and with tapping too, I wouldn't put that as a starting point, because when you have PTSD and you're triggered, your muscles are already on tension, and you're going to tap on a muscle that's already wound up. So a lot of times in neuro rehab, you tap a muscle to get it to contract. You're cueing it to contract. So if you're tapping on a body part that's already severely contracted, I can see why that's going to trigger you more.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
yeah, and so with everything I said that you said you're doing, I said not to do, go easy. Don't change it all at once. Do not do that. Think about what I said and go and pick like one thing per week to work on.
Okay.
Don't change it all at once, please. Just because I don't want it to be like your body's like, oh my gosh, and then you go into a spiral again. I want this to be successful for you. So just do one thing. If it's change the height of your chair, change the height of your chair, exist in that, breathe, what the practice we just did, work on that. And just do one thing at a time.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you have a diagram for us visual learners of the body positions and where you want to be? Because like didn't come natural to me at all. I'm over
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm not quite
it's
sure how to line it up.
yes, and I do. So a lot of times, so when I work with people one-on-one, I kind of use their body and do screenshot. So part of it is that's why I tell you to feel where your ribs are. So feel where these lower front ribs are on your body,
Mhm.
because everyone's body is different and the rib cage is different. This is the best way to give you kind of a visual, is feel those lower ribs. So I'm gonna go like that. And I don't know if you can see on my rib cage with a drop off right now. So right now I can feel my ribs and then it's squishy there. If I get my ribs down, now when I go like that, there's not a drop off. It's just flush. Now I know my ribs are down and neutral. And guess what? I now have a pooch in my belly. But that pooch is my digestive tract. If I suck it all up and in, I could make my belly look kind of flat, but all I did was just shove my digestive tract and squish it in. Most of us all have a pooch because we have a digestive tract. Maybe if you've had your colon resected, it might be a little flatter. But we want to get these rib cage just down, and you might not be able to get it down just yet. It might take some time to get it truly down and flush. So if you can't get it there right now, Christina, do not panic. It takes time.
Got a
Because
lot of work.
yes, your back has to relax, your butt cheeks have to relax, your chest has to relax, your sternum has to go in. So this is when I'm telling you, hey, get your rib cage down and neutral, I'm not saying boom, you're gonna get it just like that. There might be parts of your body that need to release to get that. So just be
Thank
patient.
you.
I think the
Thank
best analogy is baby steps.
Definitely baby steps for this.
Baby steps, and that's what I did. I was trying to do too much at once.
Yeah.
And I was getting so frustrated with myself, I couldn't do it. And then one of my therapists said, "I'm going to smack you upside the head if you don't listen."
Yeah.
And she's only 5'0", and she makes Tina look big. And she said, "Baby steps."
Yeah.
Now,
That's true.
if this happened all at once to your body or over a period of a couple months or whatever, but think of when you were walking, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, just how you matured as an adult, how you progress through life, how you progress through the military, it's baby steps. And if you can use that analogy, I think will help a lot.
Yeah.
Just not trying to do it too much at once.
That's right. Any other questions or comments too before we conclude today? We're so grateful for your time, Dr. Novotny. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
I'll make one real quick. Pam, your comment about you feel sleepy, that's good. So if you felt sleepy after that, that means you were dropping into the parasympathetic relaxation. So just wanted to clarify that for you. So good job.
You did it right. Awesome. Well, if you guys want to learn more, follow along with Dr. Novotny, go to her website, PABRinstitute.com. If you want to work with her and there's financial constraints, let our team know. We're really grateful that you guys spent your afternoon with us. And of course, Amy, thank you for being here tonight. This recording will go on to YouTube, and we hope that everybody joins us again the next time, which is the second Thursday of next month and every month at 6 p.m. Eastern. You guys have a beautiful rest of your night, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Good
you.
night,
Easy, everyone.
Thank you.